Hi, my name's Jack. Welcome back to episode 14 of WAAC Weekly, the show where we look at Team Red Path news as well as World Eaters Out of the World, just how well we're doing with the Codex. Okay, and welcome back to the Red Path for another episode of WAAC Weekly. The Codex has taken off a little bit this week. There was a massive 288 games played with the Codex this week from 76 different players. A decent amount of them were US, but still a lot of players. So to break that down, there were 26 GT performances. That this doesn't include drops anymore because we have lots more data available to us now. So 26 GT performances. That includes 3 5-1s, 3 5-1s, 3 4-1s, 2 more 4 and 2s, 5 3 and 2s, 2 3 1-1s, a 3 and 3, 6 2 and 3s, 1 2 1 2, 2 2 4s, and a 1 1 3. So yeah, there was only one person at GT that scored a win. Only one win. Everyone else scored at least 2. And then RTTs, there was a massive 50 performances, including 13 undefeated 3-0s, another 14 2-1s, 3 2-1-0s, so that with a draw, 2 1-1-1s, 12 1-2s, 1 0-1-2, and then 5 0-3s. That means that with RTT data included, we're sitting at a 57% win rate for this week. So a little bit down on last week's new Codex win rate, but it's kind of like it's a much bigger sample size this time, I think. So I should also say that it included 6 event wins. All of them were RTTs, but there were some good placings at GTs as well, and we'll get into that. Having said that, I'm going to change the threshold for what I look at for lists. Last week, I am changing it once again because, I don't want the video to be 90 minutes long. I want it to be short and digestible. So I'm changing the format, tweaking the format a little bit. Everyone is coming on this journey with me. First up, there are a couple of reasons for this. First up, given the breadth of our roster, or lack of, lists will start to look a bit more repetitive, so I don't think there's too much value in going through every single list that does 4-1 or better, or 3-0. So I'm gonna continue to look at common units like I did at the end of last video. That seemed to go down quite well. Seems to be quite useful for people. I am gonna still look at a couple of lists, but I'm gonna limit it to those that finished in the top 5% of their events. So 95th percentile or higher. That means smaller RTTs probably not going to look at. So anything under 20 players as an RTT, I'm not going to look at because there's too much variation, I guess. There, you're far more likely to have a much better run, like a much easier run. And so what we can like get from those lists, I think, is going to be less valuable than looking at the bigger events. And it looks like we're going to have no shortage of bigger events. So that is sort of a rule of thumb I'm going to establish going forwards. Obviously, we're still going to look at Team Red Path stuff. So if you're playing as part of Team Red Path, let me know, and we will look through your performances. So on to Team Red Path news, as if I'd planned it. Our very own Dara was in action this week. He won't want me to dwell on this too much. But Dara was in action in Ireland at the Broadsword Wargaming major, I think it was in the end. He ended up going 2 and 3. His defeats were all against WTC players, so like national team players, which to me is fair enough. He's being a bit hard on himself, so cheer him up a bit. He had a game 1 win against a very meta Iron Hands list, won 78-61 in that. Then went down to the first of his WTC opponents, playing Yanari, 58-79. Lost to a Goths pressure list, another WTC player, losing 76-97. Then got a win against a traditional Craftworld's new Haehl of Doom build with a 94-51 win. Before finally having a very close game in the last round to another WCC player running Empress Children. He went down 81-88 to that. Sounds like it was a very good game. I'm not sure Dara really wants to put a video together on his experiences. He's been fairly open about it in the Discord, so if you're interested in the specifics of his games, join the Discord. There is a link below in the description somewhere. And yeah, hit him up if you're really interested. He has been talking about it a bit today, Monday, as of filming. So we'll just have a quick look at his list. I know he's making some tweaks to it after this weekend. So Mo for a cheap. I know he was constrained by models he had time to paint. I know he spent a lot of time since the models got to him painting Angron. So that's why there's no Invocatus, I believe. He was never planning to not run Angron, but that's why there's no Invocatus in his HQ slots. And Master of Executions is still pretty good. 65 points. He's a very beat stick character. And is our cheapest HQ, which leaves more room for other stuff. So then 2 squads of 10 Jackals, 4 squads of 5 Berserkers, and a squad of 8. I know he was doing strat reserving the big squad of Berserkers to have them come on late game with all the buffs in the world and start beating the shit out of something. Because a squad of 8 with some of the blood type buffs gets a bit scary. I mean, squads of 5 with the blood type buffs are pretty scary. And I believe that one will be the only one with an icon. That one doesn't have. Oh, it does have an icon. That's the only one with an icon, which makes sense because you're coming out of Strat Reserve. You want to hit a 9-inch charge or an 8-inch by that point, hopefully. 2 squads of Eviscerate, 2 squad of 8-bound, sorry, both with the dual lacerators on the champion. Yeah, I know Dara was a bit underwhelmed by them. I think he's thinking about switching out 8-bound for more Berserkers, but we'll see if that ends up happening. Hellbrutes with multi-melters and Power Scourges, great. Power Scourges, I love Power Scourges. They hit a really nice breakpoint at the moment, so strength 8 -2 damage and a load of attacks, just blends Marines. 2 multi-melters, cheap anti-tank with some shooting, which we don't otherwise really have unless you go down the Chaos Knight route, which I have, but I know Dara is keen to keep pure World Eaters. So then 3 Chaos Spawn and 3 Rhinos to transport all of his Berserkers. Well, yeah, that gives him some flexibility. If the big squad's starting off the board, you get 2 Rhinos full of Berserkers, and then one of your Jackal squads also starts in a Rhino to give you something to flip forward nice and early. And then finally Angron with the Red Angel. So 5 CP, great. Gives you a lot of flex. And yeah, it's a fairly, I will say, Dara style list. It's fairly simple in what it wants to do, and it does it quite well. There's quite a few decent trade units. There's a couple of hammer units there, Angron being one of them, and there's a little bit of shooting just to help you out before you make contact, like crack transports and stuff like that. Yeah, so I know Dara is hungry for another event. So if you know of any events going on in Ireland, or can get a ticket to Manchester, hit Dara up. The Manchester GT, the UKTC event, to specify, because I know he's looking at that one. Yeah, so that's Team Red Path news for this week. As I say, if you have played an event and I've missed you, let me know. If you just let me know if you're playing in events, especially if you're not playing World Eaters. Let me know if you're playing in events, and I will get you into future shows. So then, World Eater tournament performances. As I say, I'm not going through all the lists that went 3-0 and 4-1. I'm going to do it more based on event size as well. So we're going to look at the 6 players that finished in the top 5% of their events. Starting off with Chet Manley, who finished 2nd place in the 38-player GT in Quebec, Canada, the Capital Clash 23 Grand Tournament. It did use WTC scoring, just as a note, and it was a Disciples of the Red Angel list, which is great. So Invocatus, not a Warlord because you can't in Disciples. 3 squads of 8-bound, 2 squads of 3 and a squad of 5, and the squad of 5 has Mutable Form, which I believe is the multiple wounds output. Hence the chain glaive on that champion to fish for those. Lacerators on the 2 little squads, another squad of Exalted for damage 3, 2 Land Raiders, 2 transport, hopefully the 8-bound, and just provide a fire base, and also just to spend points on, because you don't have that much choice. Angron with the Red Angel. So turning off OBSEC is nice. It didn't come up for me, but I'd imagine I also forgot and wasn't really looking for it. And I feel like it's a lot better with the fast OBSEC that 8-bound are, especially if they're getting out of transports with Invocatus next to them. So yeah, and then just a Demon's Patrol on the end. It's a fairly standard Demon's Patrol. There are a couple of Demon's Patrols knocking about. This one is the sort of hypothesized anti-psychic tech one, but it also provides some nice, fast, cheap trade units that have good marine killing profiles, right? Flesh Hounds. I love Flesh Hounds. The only reason I'm not taking a Demon's Patrol at the moment is because you can only take one allied detachment, and I'm trying Knights at the moment and enjoying them. So once I get over needing the crutch that is shooting, apparently, I'll try some Khorne demons out, because I have all the stuff painted. I just haven't used them yet. So well done to Chet. Second place, 38 player GT. Really strong performance. Another 4-1. Also great. Up next, we have people from last week will remember Schuyler Quinn, who had a very strong performance at the FLG Cherokee Open, which was a super major, I believe, because it was 259 players. Schuyler finished 13th, which is really, really good. In North Carolina in the US, he went 5-1 with this list. So 2 Lords on Juggernaut to spread out the +2-inch move aura all over the place. One with the Berserker Glaive, which is hilarious because double exploding 6s, and then if you get the exploding 6s Blood Tithe off, it gets silly. It also takes some Strength 9, which is a really nice breakpoint on a Juggerlord. Sorry. Not that nice breakpoint, but it's one of the only way, well, it is the only way I think to get a Juggerlord above Strength 8 or Strength 8 or above, which is great. Especially into a potentially guard meta that has lots of T8 and T9 vehicles. So, yeah. And then all the Berserkers in the world. So, what's that? 630 Berserkers, 2 squads with Icons, all with the Eviscerators, 2 little squads of trade units for 8-bound with the Lacerators, 1 squad of Exalted 8-bound, 3 individual spawn, 3 Rhinos to carry all of his Berserkers, and then Angron with the Red Angel. Yeah, I mean, it proves that you can do good things with Angron, right? I mean, FLG terrain is mixed at best. I've not experienced it, but I've heard stories. So, yeah. I think the people who have been trashing the Angron build on the internet, I think there needs to come a point at which people are okay to admit that they are wrong, and that you can't just make a blanket statement that Angron is bad. Because 5-1 at a very big event, and finishing 13th place is, yeah. I mean, there's always the argument for player skill. Schuyler's now played 9 games with the new codex and won 8 of them. Clearly a very good player as well, but still running Angron. So that's all I'm saying. Up next, we have Cam Hawkins, who went first place. He won the event, My Bloody Valentine RTT, 20-player event in Kansas in the US. Obviously went 3-0. Yeah, so Invocatus with his Warlord trait, squad of Jackals, 3 squads of 5 Berserkers, 2 with Icons, all with Eviscerators, 2 max squads of 8-bound, so 2 squads of 6 to take advantage of the Invocatus Warlord trait, 1 squad of 3, everything has Lacerators for the Strength 8, 1-3, damage 3, 2 squads of Exalted 8-bound, not with the Dual Chain Fists, although apparently there's a Battle Scribe error still at the moment with the Exalted 8-bound equipment, so I don't know. I think it was to do with the stats though, not the points. I'm not sure. 3 individual Chaos Spawn, and then 3 Executioners with Worthy Offerings. So, Worthy Offerings Executioners do seem to be gaining popularity. 3 is an interesting choice. Obviously, it takes a big chunk of points out of your army, and it's almost a quarter of your army that's not able to benefit from Blood Tithe. Like, it can contribute to it, but it doesn't benefit from the buffs, which is quite a big chunk. I I mean, there's still quite a lot in that list. I think 15 Berserkers feels maybe a little light, and then maybe the 12 8-bound feels a bit heavy. Like that's a lot of points to tie up into 12 models that are not that hard to kill. But I mean, clearly it's done work. First place in an RTT, going 3-0. Very strong performance. Yeah, I mean, I've been champion executioners for a while, or war dogs at least for a while. Executioners, as I say, pretty popular. 3 is interesting, and something to think about. Obviously, provides a decent amount of firepower at that point, and also some stuff to distract shooting from the rest of your army as they yeet up. Because I think if you're playing hyper aggressive with this army, which I feel like you probably are, they're probably not going to be shooting at the executioners, and then the executioners can run around and stand on points with OBSEC 5 models, not get shot because they're busy dealing with all your melee threats, and just plink away at things, right? Like, we can soften targets for your berserkers, for your jackals, for your 8-bound. So yeah, it's not. Yeah, it's an interesting list. So up next we have Sigurd Loberg. Again, very sorry. It's a very Scandinavian name. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. I hope I didn't butcher it too much. Also won an event. First place in a 20-player RTT in Norway. So went 3-0 with this list. Battle of the Coast 40k RTT. Again, used WTC scoring, so just a note. So Invocatus with his Warlord trait, 4 squads of 5 Berserkers, 2 with Icons, 2 squads of 5 8-bound, 2 squads of 3 Exalted 8-bound, 1 Chainglaive, 1 Lacerators. I guess that gives him some like flexibility in terms of what, depending on what he needs to send the pre-game move into, or what he wants to alpha with, or what makes contact first, basically. Exalted 8-bound again, 1 with doubled fists and 1 with the Chainglaive. 2 individual spawn, 2 rhinos, and then I want to try this as well. And then a Khorne Demons Patrol with a Bloodthirster with Indomitable Onslaught, so the Face Cap Bloodthirster with Skull Reaver, which I think is the Relic Axe. I cannot remember the stats off the top of my head. I assume it's a Killy Axe, and then Indomitable Onslaught is the 8 wounds per phase thing. And then a squad of 10 Bloodletters to fill it out. This isn't quite the list I want to try, actually. I do want to try, and I think I've seeded the idea with Dara now, of Face Cap Bloodthirster with Angron. Because I think that's going to be really hard to deal with, because they're both really fast, and one of them's quite hard to kill. And Angron ain't, I mean, it depends on the matchup, but he's not like a slouch to kill, depending on how you roll your saves. Yeah, so I mean, this list is quite quite a blunt instrument as well, isn't it? You've got the 8-bound, which are running out really fast. You've got Face Cap Bloodthirster also running out really fast, doing loads of damage to whatever it connects with. It's just a very fast, very aggro army, and some people are struggling to deal with that. Some people panic. It forces opponents to make decisions about what the biggest threat to them is, and I think all of this is a threat to most things. So you're forcing your opponent to like massively fine tune their shooting, or their combat, but massively fine tune their resource like allocation for how they deal with your list. So yeah, I'm not surprised that this list did well, even with the points bump on the Bloodthirster. Yeah, so well done to Sigurd. Up next we have Frederick Schellenberg, who went first in a 21-player RTT in Winnipeg, Canada. 3-0 at the February Guti Throwdown. GUTI, don't know. Yeah, so Invocatus with his Warlord trait, a Demon Prince. Popped up in a few lists this week, actually, Demon Princes. Sometimes with the -1 to wound relic, sometimes not. Sometimes with the 6s to hit auto wounds, handing out to a core unit relic. We'll go through that in a sec. So 10 Jackals, not with the Skull Smasher this time, presumably for points. 4 squads of Berserkers, all with icons. 2 squads of 5 8-bound and a squad of 4 8-bound, all with Lacerators. 1 squad of Exalted 8-bound with the double fists. 2 Hellbrutes with fists and melters. Then 2 individual care spawn and 2 rhinos. So this is fairly standard, I think, at this point. The Demon Prince is a nice tech piece. It's damage 3, high strength, damage 3, and flies, so it's quite fast as well. Yeah, has got wings. Just check it. Yeah, so it's a I think this is a fairly standard list. It's what a lot of people are moving towards. I think 5 8-bound might be considered overkill at this point. Does add a little bit of reliability. I think dice can sometimes fuck you a little bit with 8-bounds, and picking them up to 5s adds sort of guarantees that they'll kill what they touch. Whereas with 3s, you're in trouble against some of the harder targets. 4s might be the sweet point because obviously they are quite expensive on a point per model basis. Cool to see Helbrick's in there. Again, Invocatus, I really think makes Helbrick's viable. It'll be interesting to see if we do get them so that they actually do cost 105 points each with all the war gear options. Maybe 10 points for the Lascannon like CSM book, but be interesting to see if that gets fixed anytime soon. Or fixed. I don't even know if it's broken. I wonder if that'll get updated at any point in the near future. Because as of recording, we did have the Forge Worlds update today. That's a tangent. I will get on to that in a bit. So up last, our best performance this week was Terek Haehl, who came second place at the 60-player major in Arizona in the US, the Scorched Earth Open. He went 5-1, and yeah, a really strong performance. So Invocatus, no Warlord trait by the looks of it. World Each Demon Prince with Sword, the Helm of Brazen Eye, which is, I believe, the -1 to hit, -1 to wound, sorry. Mo, just because cheap, 30 Jackals, only 5 Berserkers, 2 squads of 5 8-bound, both with the Chainglaves, interesting, and then 3 squads of 3 Exalted 8-bound, 3 individual spawn, and Angron. So that starts on 5 CP because of the relic. Yeah, I mean, Jackals for early trades with spawn, I guess. Demon Prince really fast and quite irritating to shift at T6 -1 to wound. The Master of Executions, Invocatus, the 8-bound, all providing strong push threats, as well as a lot of jank because like the 6-inch heroic and stuff. There's a lot of zone threat play there, which I think is makes the list obviously really strong and in the hands of clearly a very capable player. So I mean that's kind of the list that I've looked at so this week because, as I say, those are the lists that finished in the top 5% of their events. It's going to help keep the videos to a reasonable length, although I am running long already. Excellent. So finally, well, almost finally, I just wanted to take a moment to look at the unit matrix that I tested last week, and it received some good feedback. So I'm going to just look at it again. I've done it for this week. So this is separate this week from last week. As you can see at the bottom, there's different dates. So basically what this is I've gone through I'm not sure I explained it that well last week. I've gone through the 19 lists that either finished 3-0 or 4, so basically 4-1 or better, and just looked at what was in the list. And so there's units, there's how many of each unit there is in the list, and there's how many, or in each specific list, and there's how many lists they featured in, so that we can have a look and see if there's any sort of commonalities in terms of units used and how many of each unit is being used in the majority of winning lists. And we can maybe look at how sort of a core for competitive lists, I guess. It's to help people sort of who are looking to get into competitive World Eaters, units that you can start with, basically. If you're looking to slowly build up your collection, this is what people are running at the moment. So, as you can see, 8-bound, Exalted 8-bound, and Berserkers. 6 8-bound and 3 Exalted 8-bounds. So generally 2 squads of 8-bounds and 1 squad of Exalted. Generally a given. 2 spawn, also generally a given, and 5 Berserkers. The only list that didn't have Berserkers or spawn in was the Disciples list. Because they don't have the demon keyword. Also interesting is that Invocatus continues to be in most lists, although not always with his Warlord trait. He is in 15 lists, and his Warlord trait is only in 10. So that is, something to note. Invocatus' Warlord trait did come out slightly ahead of Angron this week. I think it was a 10-8 split. So that means there's one list that didn't have either in, which I believe was the... Yeah, I can't remember off the top of my head. So that's interesting to note. As you can see, 8-bound Exalted, 8-bound Berserkers, all really popular. That I think is unsurprising. The main thing to note is steer clear of Demon Engines. They're just not doing very well at the moment. Forge Fiends, Mauler Fiends not appearing that often, which to me smacks of player skill involved. So the list where they are turning up is in the hands of very skilled players. Yeah. The other thing that I did, so demons have started to crop up a bit as well. As I said, there was more than one list that involved demons. Bloodletters, Fleshhounds, that good stuff seems to be more popular than the Facecap Bloodthirster, though I think the Facecap Bloodthirster has some legs, especially in a list that also has Angron in it. Yeah, and as I say, there's one Disciples list. Some mad lad ran 3 Master of Executions. There was a Uraka. Berserkers are coming down in terms of how many people are using them. How many people are using loads of Berserkers. I think people are looking to trim points for other parts of the army, and I think Berserkers is where a lot of people are making the cuts. Just because I think some of the other stuff does a little bit better before the blood type points get going, before the blood type buffs get going. Berserkers can slap, and they can slap real hard, especially with the blood type buffs, but before that, they can bounce into some things, especially depending on the local meta. If you're playing into like things like Deathwing or Custodes, Berserkers will bounce before you get blood type points off, blood type buffs off. So that might be a reflection of that. Just adapting to the meta a little bit. Yeah, Jackals have started to appear as well. Dara will be really happy because I know he's got a Mortals army, apparently. It's a myth, but maybe one day. Yeah, and it's, as I say, it's still really good to see Angron getting play at the very top level. And it's still being relatively even. The Immercatus build that was kind of like bandied about on the internet the week before the Codex and the week of the Codex, that hasn't taken over to the extent that I think everyone expected it to. Maybe that'll change in coming weeks. Maybe it won't. I'm here for it. I will see. I will report back to everyone else. Yeah, so I mean, I've left it on the screen so people can read into it what they want. Obviously, there are some trends there. So 8-bound Exalted, 8-bound Berserkers. Basically, Immercatus is also a good pick. Yeah, Rhinos to carry Berserkers, also a good pick. Shocking, I know. So finally, the great game. Unfortunately, the rankings are still hidden. I can't find a way to find the 2023 rankings, which will be very limited at the moment because it hasn't been going that long. It's been going about a month at this point. So if you know a way to see the 2023 rankings, please let me know. So I can start looking at how much our player base is growing, because I'd imagine it's growing quite a lot. Yeah, aside from that, as I mentioned before, please join the Discord. There's a link down below somewhere. Some great discussions going on. Yeah, we've got a lot of active players there, especially now. And if you like this content, please like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. Bump the algorithm. Get our name out there. It's great. We make lots of content. Sure. Yeah, come into Discord. Tell us what tournament you're going to, because I know all 3 of me, Dara, and Jamie are going to be pretty active this week. This year. So let us know where you're going to tournaments. We'll meet up. And finally, stay healthy, stay safe, and kill main burn.